Good afternoon. My name is Andrew Ridgey. I am the Executive Director of the New York City Hospitality Alliance, and I want to thank everyone to our second New York City Mayoral Candidate Forum, Restaurant and Nightlife Edition. For like so many of those people that are tuning in today or will watch the recording of this, the city's restaurant and nightlife industry is really in your blood. It's in your DNA. And it's not just in our DNA. I also think our restaurants, our nightlife are not only part of the economic foundation of New York City, but also the cultural and social fabric of who we are as people and what we are as a city. And I don't have to tell people that are tuning in, before the pandemic, when we had 100% indoor occupancy, when we had a strong economy, it was so difficult to operate a successful restaurant, bar, nightclub here in the five boroughs. And then when the pandemic hit, it really just changed the rules of the game, and it's decimated our industry. Thousands of eating and drinking establishments throughout the five boroughs have shuttered. Countless more are teetering on the edge of survival. We know more than 140,000 New Yorkers who worked in our restaurants and bars and clubs before the pandemic are still out of work. And we don't know when they're going to come back or if they are going to come back. And that's why it's going to be critically important that the next mayor of our great city not only loves to go out and eat and drink and socializes, but really cares deeply about this industry and cares deeply about helping to rebuild it through their policies that they enact and making sure that our industry has a seat at the table in City Hall. So the next mayoral election, the primary election, is scheduled for June 22nd, which will be here before we know it. It will also be the first mayoral election using ranked choice voting, where instead of just picking one candidate, you will list your candidates in order. And then there's a system to determine who wins. So 2020, when they take office, is going to be a critical time. There's obviously a lot of time between now and then, but part of this forum series is to give you all an opportunity to hear directly from the candidates, answer questions, and as the election comes closer, we'll continue to have more conversations with them. So before we jump into it, I just need to thank two people or two companies that have helped support and put on these series. One is KI Legal Services. They're a city-based law firm that is focused on representing the restaurant and nightlife industry here in the city. They've been advocates, whether it's helping businesses comply with different rules and regulations, or really giving them full encompassing legal support and their expertise. They have been out there every single day. And their two partners, Andreas Kusadakis and Michael Ikovo, or their team, are always available to chat with you. I really encourage you, go visit their website at kilegal.com. I said it last time at our first forum, I got a little emotional, but you know, Andreas Kusadakis and his father, who passed away from COVID early on, owned Tribeca Kitchen right by City Hall. Before that, Gee Whiz Diner, had been with our city for so many years, supporting after 9/11, after Sandy, helping serve the community from Tribeca Kitchen. And unfortunately, we lost him, but he was someone with hospitality in his blood. And he and so many others are the people that we at the Hospitality Alliance are fighting for and make sure that we build back a strong and just recovery for our industry. So when I say they understand the industry, they truly, truly not only understand it, but live it. And that goes to Miles Share and Associates Insurance Group, who's another person who probably needs no introduction to a lot of people on this call, but have been so supportive of our industry, of the Hospitality Alliance over the years, really as a premier boutique firm offering all different types of insurance coverage, but also consulting with businesses, working with people, and really building relationships in our industry, which have been so critically important, and helping us succeed to the greatest of our ability. And you can learn more about Miles and his firm at info@msaig.com. That's info@msaig.com. And again, it's companies like these, along with all of our restaurant nightlife members, that allow the Hospitality Alliance to do what we do. So with that out of the way, this is the forum. First, we're going to have part one. it's going to be the mayoral introductions. Second, we have 6 questions with 2 minutes to answer for each candidate. And then part 3 is going to be one quick question about restaurants and nightlife. We were joking before we came on. These candidates do all of these forums for housing and every different interest you can imagine in New York City. Sometimes nothing to do with restaurants or nightlife, but they seem to always get asked what their favorite food is or where they get their favorite bagel. So I said I wasn't going to ask that question. I was going to ask, instead of where's your favorite slice of pizza from, is how are you going to enact policies to help save the pizzeria that makes your favorite slice of pizza? So we'll get to a fun question at the end, but I want to get into it. So first, we're going to have our opening remarks. The candidates, as I said, will each be provided 2 minutes to introduce themselves, their backgrounds, and why they are the New Yorker that we should be electing to be our next mayor. I also just asked you to stick to an introduction. Don't get too much into your policy platforms because we have questions that'll get into it, so we don't want to have to repeat it. Also, Andrew Yang is going to be joining us. Something came up, but he's running a little bit late, but he will be joining us. Each candidate will be asked a question from a different restaurant or nightlife operator from a different borough. So that's going to be great. I'm going to bring them onto the screen when it's time for them to ask, and you will hear a voice tune in when you have 30 seconds of your 2 minutes left. And here we go. So first, I am going to bring onto the screen Melba Wilson, or she can probably bring herself on at this point. Melba, are you there?
I am here.
All right. So Melba needs no introduction. She actually, let me get back. Let's do the introduction. I'll come right back to you. We'll do the introductions and I'll bring you back, but you can stay hang out for right now. So why don't we start right now? We're going to rotate in each question. So there's a different order. So for the opening remarks, why don't we just start in alphabetical order by last name? Shaun Donovan, you have 2 minutes for your self-introduction.
Thank you, Andrew, for having this forum. More importantly, thank you for your incredible, incredible advocacy on behalf of restaurants in this time of crisis. I really, all New Yorkers, thank you for your leadership at this time. I am a public servant because I grew up in New York City at a different time of crisis. I'm the child of a complicated New York family, which meant I had 2 parents after they were divorced, working separate jobs. So for me, home cooking was the restaurant around the corner rather than 10 blocks away. And I do, Andrew, love eating across all of the 5 boroughs. But I also, as I said, saw a city in crisis when I was a child growing up. I saw homelessness exploding on our streets. I saw South Bronx, Central Brooklyn, so many communities crumbling, literally burning to the ground. And it lit a fire in me to go to work on behalf of this city that I love. I came back right after school and worked for a nonprofit rebuilding those very same communities. And that started a 30-year career on the front lines of housing and homelessness, of racial and economic justice, rebuilding this city and ultimately the country. Through that career, I learned what it means to lead through crisis. I was housing commissioner in this city in the wake of 9/11. I was asked to be housing secretary in the midst of the worst housing crisis of our lifetimes. When Sandy hit our shores, President Obama asked me to lead the entire federal recovery effort. And because no good deed goes unpunished, he then asked me to lead the $4 trillion federal budget. And 3 weeks later, Ebola emerged. And I went to work with Dr. Fauci, making sure it didn't become a pandemic that cost tens of thousands of New Yorkers their lives. So I am the right candidate at this moment because of my deep experience in crisis and big, bold ideas to lead this city back and help us not just repair and rebuild, but reimagine ourselves as a city that works for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Shaun. Next up, Kathryn Garcia, and I don't want to embarrass you, but happy birthday. Everyone should know. Thank you for joining us on your birthday.
Thank you, and I'm happy to be here on my birthday. But thank you, Andrew, for having me today and for organizing this opportunity. I also want to thank you for all the work you've been doing to advocate for the federal relief we need, the Restaurants Act, and the bold action we need to take to save restaurants. And I stand with you, as I did earlier this year. I want to start by introducing myself. I grew up here in Brooklyn. I was adopted into a multiracial family one of five playing Skelly on the street in 1970s Brooklyn, a family that was tailor-made for New York City. And as a white woman growing up with Black siblings, I didn't have to look further than the dinner table to see the strength of diversity. But I saw the ugly side of how I was treated differently from my siblings, too. And I was raised here and educated in our public schools, and it is where I chose to raise my family. I love New York City, and I am deeply committed to this city, and I am running for mayor to lead the best city in the world to a better tomorrow. What does my administration look like? Being mayor is showing up to work early every day, treating New Yorkers like customers, and knowing that political platitudes don't solve problems. Hard work does, and that's my specialty. Last year, I literally built a program over the weekend that has now delivered 200 million meals to homebound seniors and vulnerable families. At the same time, I was at work every day at 5 a.m. as sanitation commissioner because that's when sanitation workers
30
who pick up your
seconds.
trash and plow your snow get to work. Every single union I worked with or regulated has endorsed me. But I have a vision for where we need to go to make sure that we are bringing back our city, and the economy has to open. And that is really the center of it, has to be restaurants and museums and dance and theater, because that's what differentiates us from any other city in the country and any other city in the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathryn. Diane Morales, you are on the virtual floor.
Thank you, Andrew. Good afternoon, everybody. Such a pleasure to be here. My name's Diane Morales, and I have had over 25 years of direct experience meeting the needs of New Yorkers when our systems have failed. I am from here, I taught here, I raised my family here, and I organized right in this city. Throughout all of this, I've had experience with failed systems, but I've also had experience with the hope of our communities. And it's that combination that led me to enter this race. New York City's in my blood. When the pandemic hit, I got involved in organizing and delivering meals to my community through mutual aid. Over the last 10 days alone, I've partnered with community-based groups to coordinate vaccine scheduling and transportation for over 300 Black and Brown seniors. Yet while our food lines have gotten longer, we all know that Wall Street and the stock market got stronger. I'm not a traditional candidate. My ideas are bold and radically different approaches to respond to what is a radically different time. The COVID-19 pandemic has got to be addressed. And in doing so, we must honor and prioritize the frontline workers who have run this city while so many have had the privilege of working from home. The grocery clerks, the bus drivers, the restaurant workers, the delivery people, and the healthcare workers. 79% of whom we know are Black and Latino, and approximately 63% of them are women. We're at a crossroads in this country, and it's time for us to reckon with the pandemics of pre-existing social conditions that have wreaked havoc on our communities. Our system's not broken, it's working exactly as it was designed to work. You don't reform this kind of system, you transform it. I'm running to build a politics for all people because those currently in power have always had the power. I am looking forward to having this conversation with you all. And I will say, I am not promising to get New York City back to normal. I'm promising to build a New York City that's never existed before with each and every one of you. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Well, there were the introductions. And now Melba Wilson, come back. So while she comes back on, Melba is just an incredible, incredible person. As she always says, she was born, bred, and buttered in the village of Harlem. She is the president of the New York City Hospitality Alliance. She is a dear friend, an incredible chef and restaurateur, chef owner of Melba's restaurant in Harlem. And now that I guess it's a little bit more public, it was supposed to open before the pandemic, but Melba's Mussels with Chef Mimi will be opening hopefully in the near future, which is something positive amongst all the other doom and gloom. So Melba, the floor is yours. The order of questions this time will go back to the beginning and then we'll start. So Shaun Donovan, Kathryn Garcia, Diane Morales.
Great. Well, Andrew, thank you so much for that introduction. And I want to thank all of you for being here today. As a small business owner and a single mom who 18 years ago made a conscious decision to invest my entire life savings into a community and a city that I love, Harlem, New York, as someone who employs 39 people full-time from the Harlem community, and most importantly, as someone who will not be leaving our beloved New York City during these difficult times. I want to thank you for being here. The future of this city is important to me. My question is, you often hear about how high commercial rents burden small businesses. In many commercial leases, the property taxes, which have skyrocketed over the years, get passed through to the tenants like restaurants. As mayor, what will you do to address these property taxes, which are burdens placed on the restaurant business?
Thank you, Melba. Shaun, you're on deck. 2 minutes. Go ahead.
Melba, thank you. I had the good fortune of having a delicious meal outdoors at Melba's when it was a little bit warmer just a few months ago, and I will keep coming back. So I'm glad you're still there and still fighting for this city. What I would say about our rents and taxes more broadly is, first and foremost, in the midst of this pandemic, we need a mayor who actually understands how to unlock the help that we need from Washington, D.C., and to make sure it gets to businesses like yours, which, as you know, whether it was the first round of PPP, whether it's so many other steps that the federal government has taken, too often we've seen those rescue programs go to big businesses rather than to businesses like Melba's. And so we need a mayor who really understands both how to get the help we need. Nobody understands the federal budget. Nobody knows, not just the Biden administration, but all our leaders in Congress better than I do. And in fact, I've been working with leaders in Congress and the Biden administration to make sure we get more resources, unemployment insurance, all of those that can be delivered. Second, I've been working my entire career in Harlem, in communities across the city, with nonprofit organizations, with organizations like LISC and Enterprise that can deliver that help directly to businesses like yours. And I also understand and have advocated that we have to fundamentally reform our tax system to make it more fair, particularly our property tax system, which is the most regressive system of taxation we have in New York City. And so I support a fundamental remaking of it that would put the burden where it belongs, and not on small businesses like yours, and frankly, not on renters and homeowners in Harlem as well, that we've seen for too long burdened by disproportionate property tax assessments and rates.
Thank you, Shaun. Kathryn.
All right, this is a critical issue and it's close to my heart. My sister owns an event space in Brooklyn, and obviously she's had a pretty terrible year. But we know that the triple net lease rent doesn't work. So we need to fundamentally reshape our property tax system. We can't afford to have it be this unequal, neighborhood to neighborhood, type of building to type of building. But we also can play a facilitating role for small businesses and landlords. They really cannot afford to have small businesses go out of business, because who is coming? There is no other entrepreneur coming, and we have to make sure we are supporting our small businesses. And as I said in my Reopen to Stay Open, that we will create a fund to make micro loans available to over 5,000 small businesses in the city of New York.
Thank you. Diane, you're up.
Thanks, Andrew. And thanks for the question, Melba. So, I guess my initial framing of my response to this is that we've got to recognize that not all businesses are created equal, not all properties are created equal, and we need to respond in kind so that we are differentiating and distinguishing between our smaller businesses that that are much more vulnerable and susceptible to challenging times, and our larger businesses and our larger property owners. And so, I think that we need to think about and really look at how it is that we support and provide tax relief to property owners that cannot actually shoulder the burden, right, of these critical times, and would be otherwise inclined to try to pass that on to their tenants if that's the case. So we, first, I think, is focusing on and providing property tax relief to small build property owners that are really, really struggling during this period of time. And the other thing I think is that we also need to look at, again, addressing the tax disparities and really taxing much more heavily those speculative landlords who sit on vacant spaces intentionally because they are looking for the write-off, right? And so all things are not created equal, and neither should our responses to these situations be equal. So I'd look to actually reform the property tax system with the caveats as reference, and also to implement a land value tax to offset any kind of revenue loss that we would be talking about in terms of providing relief to small property owners.
Great. Thank you, Diane. Thank you, Melba. We'll see you soon. And next, I'm going to bring up Rob Bookman for the next question. So Rob Bookman, I don't even know, where do I start? It's been a friend and a mentor for so many years, founding member of the New York City Hospitality Alliance, counsel to the Hospitality Alliance. His firm, Pisetsky and Bookman, has really been a leader on the forefront of so many issues representing restaurant and nightlife people for so many years, going back to the Nightlife Association and the Cabaret Association, and a wealth of knowledge. And I know whoever is elected mayor, he is certainly going to be a wealth of expertise on all these city regulatory issues that your administration will be dealing with. So in order is going to be Kathryn Garcia, Dianne Morales, and Shaun Donovan. Rob Bookman, the virtual floor is yours.
Thank you, buddy. You see, Kathryn, it's your birthday, but what happens is when you're around long enough, you gain a certain amount of gravitas, and all of a sudden, for years I was just a troublemaker. Now I'm wise, and
So I have something to look forward to.
Now that I'm old, I'm wise. Correct. So going back, I've gone back through multiple mayoral administrations, representing this industry now. And one thing that has been constant throughout is that restaurant, bar, and nightclub owners are always expressing significant frustration in their interactions with city government and city inspectors. Whether it is treating small businesses as ATMs with constantly high fines, whether it's different inspectors giving different information, like we recently, experienced with the outdoor dining program, often contradictory, information, whether it is, permits and licenses getting stuck in red tape and taking forever, to get a building, a new business open that's, ready to pay taxes and hire people, and it's taking forever, to get some sign off, all the way to, inspectors showing up in the middle of, heavy business hour, when they could do that inspection at off hours, and ruining an entire evening and trying to business service. On the fines, for example, you all were around and know that under Mayor Bloomberg, who really loved fining small businesses, there was an explosion in fines. The restaurant industry, from the health department, started out in his first year with $8 million a year in fines, and it finished up in $52 million a year in fines. That's the same restaurant industry. And while it has gone down a little bit now because of laws that we have succeeded in getting passed, it is still way too high, still around $34 million. There were hearings just this week on legislation, which I'm sure you're aware of, to try to fundamentally change this relationship between government inspectors and small businesses, from one of fines to one of education, opportunities to cure, warnings, moving towards a goal of compliance, not fines. But it's going to be up to the next mayor to really implement that legislation should it get passed. So I guess my question to you is twofold. One, are you familiar with the legislation and do you support its concept? And two, what will you do as mayor to reform the city government's relationship with small businesses, restaurants in particular, in the permitting, regulatory, and inspection process?
Thank you. And this is a key part of my plan to reopen, to stay open. We make it so hard to do business here. If we're going to have a strong recovery, we have to be far more agile. And that is why I've committed to making one city permit that will be addressed in 30 days. I know that sounds like it can't be done, but I know that it is doable and that with technology, we can get it done. I've had the experience as a city commissioner trying to get something built where I needed an expediter to get through the buildings department and the fire department. The fire inspector who came one day said I needed this, and the next one said I needed something else. I was like, I built it to the plan. Like, can't that be what I submit? But we cannot use our small businesses, and particularly our restaurants, as piggybacks. They are the drivers of employment. And so when I am mayor, I am committed to getting rid of the bureaucratic nonsense and not allowing the budget to be balanced on the backs of particularly restaurants. Our inspectors need to ensure that the public is safe, but they can do that in off hours, and they can do that through education and warnings. So yes, I do, in the spirit of the legislation, agree that that is something I would like to see happen in the city of New York, and we really must do it. Because if we don't get our restaurant industry back on its feet, it's hard to get everything else to come back.
30 seconds.
Hard to make it so that people want to be here. And I will just put forward that restaurants actually also make us safer because they activate our neighborhoods into the evening hours. It is a win-win. And that is why I will be supportive going forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. Diane Morales.
Thanks. This is a really important question, right? Because so often our city, as Kathryn referenced, really nickels and dimes small businesses through fines and through the permitting process and through the multiple agencies. It is a myriad and it's a maze that we're made to sort of jump through, and all these hoops that are jumped through. And I'm thinking a lot about the fiasco that happened when the city decided to change the rules on what kind of signage and awnings needed to be outside when we, went. It's just right. That's
Classic.
kind of like the opposite of what the role that the city should play. Under my administration, we'd really work to streamline the process, to provide, language translated for, immigrant small businesses, things that are relevant and accessible, to really give our small business services more power, not just to advocate, but to really intervene and curtail on behalf of our businesses, other agencies from overstepping on our small businesses. I think this is particularly necessary during with thinking about the COVID-19 regulations, when there's multiple agencies trying to enforce, and often, what that results in is that some small businesses see multiple inspections in a day, not just an inspection that happens at an inopportune time, but more than one inspection happening throughout the course of the day. The bottom line is that in any recovery moving forward has to center supporting and making it possible for our small businesses to come back and for businesses to come back and thrive. We have to move away from the punitive tradition and disciplinary tradition to one that is supportive, educational, and really geared towards helping our businesses and our restaurants succeed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. Shaun.
Thank you, Robert. And I want to agree with a lot of what Kathryn and Diane have said. We essentially have seen, I think, an administration that believes we can regulate our way to recovery rather than really focusing on how to support our small businesses, our small our restaurants, and so many other things that are going to help us come back. I was in Jackson Heights a few months ago speaking to restaurant owners and just hearing the description of trying to get a new sign put up. I was in the South Bronx just last week and heard about an inspection that had been approved, and then a different inspector came back the next week and denied it for a 2-inch overhang that the prior inspector had approved. And so those are the kinds of things that we must fundamentally change. And the thing I want to say here is that you don't have to take my word for it that I would change it. I actually have made exactly these kind of changes when I was housing commissioner in this city, where we did not, by the way, Robert, dramatically increase in the same way that happened with the health department during the Bloomberg years. We completely automated our system. We brought it online, and we created a much more interactive process with owners to be able to schedule inspections and to be able to get those resolved. And certainly technology has come a long way since then. Why shouldn't you as an owner be able to take a picture of something that has been corrected and send it in? Why should inspectors be able to pull up online very quickly other inspections so that you don't have the problem that I described in the South Bronx last week? Those are the kinds of changes that we need a mayor who's actually put in place. When I was budget director for President Obama over the $4 trillion federal budget, we dramatically speeded up federal payments to our small businesses so they didn't have to wait months and months and potentially go out of business. Those are the kinds of changes with the right mayor who can bring everything together for a single approval, not have to deal with 8 different agencies. All of that can happen if we have the right leadership with the real experience in making change in government.
Thank you all for very insightful answers. Since you all, just one more second, Andrew, since you all gave good examples of ridiculous summonses, I'll tell you one of my favorite. Sidewalk cafes under the old law, the barrier cannot be more than 30 inches. I don't know what it is, but that's what it was, 30 inches. And that barrier could be planters with plants. We had a restaurant in September that got a violation because the plants grew over the course of the summer. So now from the ground to the top of the plant, it was 34 inches, and they got a $500 fine because they're now barrier because their plants grew.
You can't make this stuff up.
Can't make it up. I will see you at the back end. I'll have some closing comments. Keep up the good answers. Thank you.
That's beautiful. Thanks, Rob. Thanks, everyone. Susan Povich. So while Susan brings her camera. Hello. So Susan is a board member of the Alliance, a good friend, just a really awesome person. If you like people, Susan's a good person to know. She's also the co-founder and owner of Red Hook Lobster Pound. Red Hook Lobster has outputs in Brooklyn, obviously, and in Manhattan, and now DC. She also had a beloved food truck named the Big Red, and now Susan has the floor to ask her question. The order is first Dianne Morales, Shaun Donovan, and then Kathryn Garcia. Susan?
Hi, am I unmuted? Can you hear me? Hi, thank you so much for giving your time to come speak to us. As you know, I've been a Red Hook for 25 years. We are very invested in our community. It's traditionally an underserved community. And when we opened, we really tried to both serve the community as far as food and employment. We founded the Red Hook Business Association to represent all small businesses in Red Hook. And we've achieved, tremendous traction. Like some other communities in New York, we're fairly cut off. We suffered a lot in Sandy. We're suffering a lot in COVID, but we have an amazing community with mutual aid societies abounding, and it's just a wonderful place to be. One of us at the Lobster Pounds, one of our commitments is to do a lot of employment of formerly incarcerated people. It's something that's really near and dear to our heart, and the restaurant business is a great place for people to come. Years ago, I actually taught cooking at Rikers Island on a, try to ease people out and get them into restaurants, into good jobs. However, I'm asking both on behalf of restaurants and all the small businesses that we represent in Red Hook. Before the pandemic, there was a well-intended yet controversial legislation introduced that would require small businesses like restaurants to provide all their employees with 100% employer-funded paid vacation, in addition to the paid sick leave that we are already required to pay by law. As mayor, what would your position be on such legislation, 100% small employer-funded mandates? And what would be your general philosophy and guiding principles on proposed somewhat onerous labor laws that small business owners have expressed concern about?
Diane, you were up, followed by Shaun and then Kathryn.
Great. Great. Thank you so much. First of all, Susan, I just want to thank you for the work that you have done both in the Brooklyn community and the Rikers community. It is not insignificant, and it's really inspiring to have such a powerful commitment to elevating the community. So in terms of the requirements and the burdens on small businesses, one of the things I'll start off by saying is I think that if the pandemic has shown us anything, it is that we need to center workers and everyday people in our policies. And I do believe in the idea of extending these protections and these rights to our workers so that they also can live in dignity and access the things that, that we all want in our lives. That being said, I do not think it is fair to impose the full burden of that on our small businesses. I think we know that even in the best of times, that the profit margin is about 10%. After operating expenses for most businesses. And so, I think it's important for the city to support, whether through incentives or, some sort of supplemental programs to support your ability to operate and thrive, and also to support our workers' abilities to live in dignity and to have access to the kinds of things that we all want to have access to in our lives. I think that, we need to find ways to make it work that will offset the burdens on the businesses particularly until we're in full recovery mode. I think that there are stages to this process. And again, in connection to my original answer about like not all businesses being created equally, I think our response also needs to account for some ability to tailor and customize along different tiers of business operations.
Thank you, Diane. And I see Andrew Yang just joined us. Welcome,
Hey, Andrew. Sorry I'm late. Sorry, everyone.
No problem. So we're going to loop in. I'm going to have Shaun and then Kathryn answer the question, and then we'll give you an update if you didn't hear it, and then we'll let you do a quick intro. So the next up is Shaun Donovan. And thanks, Diane.
Thanks, Andrew. Susan, it's so great to see you. And after watching you go through Sandy at the Red Hook Lobster Pound, the incredible work that you did to recover and to know what you're going through now, thank you for your commitment, and thank you for lifting up the Red Hook community and all they've done to help. It is wonderful to see you, and give Ralph my best as well. What I would say here is, going back to something I said earlier, we cannot just regulate our way to recovery. We need to make sure, first of all, that we are treating our small businesses separately from other businesses. That's what I have always done in my work in housing and economic development, is to focus on the fact that what may apply for a 50-person or a 5,000-person business does not apply to a 5-person business. And the rules just need to be different. Second, we also have to make sure that government isn't just providing mandates, but also supports. And if you think about, in a very different way, what we did with Obamacare, it was to create a government effort to provide healthcare that didn't fall on employers. We need to be doing the same things under wages and benefits. And I do believe that consistently, we need a government that's oriented toward not just fining and regulating, but on providing the supports and incentives to be able to not only start a small business, but to be able to grow it. So I am absolutely not in favor of applying the same rules to you at the Red Hook Lobster Pound and at small businesses that I would to other businesses across the city.
Thank you, Shaun. Kathryn.
Yes, no, I mean, we are a humane society. We want everyone to have paid insurance, and I understand that it's really tough, even for a campaign, it's tough to pay health insurance and all of the benefits that are required, but you do it because it's the right thing to do. But this is where government cannot just do an unfunded mandate on small businesses. The margins are too small. And we need to make sure that we are working much more collaboratively about what that economic impact is, and do things like ensure that maybe it's the property tax incentive that we are changing. Maybe it is direct funding to support the paid vacation, but it is very different to be a small business than to be a conglomerate. And your ability to supply this has to be something that we are supporting and working together on. I know that from my sister's work in her business, it's not only just those regulatory, but it's a broad number of regulations around labor, particularly in the restaurant industry, even around tipping and the crazy compliance that has to go into that. So I am there to be a partner with small businesses and to find solutions, but it can't just be unfunded mandates. We have to ensure that we are getting the best of both, that we are protecting workers at the same time that we are protecting our small businesses.
Thank you, Kathryn. So Andrew, thank you for joining us. I sent you direct. Did you see the question?
Yeah, no, I got the substance of the question. Thank you, Andrew. My first job was as a busboy at a Chinese restaurant, the Imperial Wok. One reason I tip well to this day. But I came up here in New York City as the owner of a small business. And I'm a Democrat. But one of the frustrations I think a lot of small business owners have is that Democrats seem to think that all businesses are made of money when many restaurants are struggling to survive. The profit margins apparently 5% or so, and this was pre-pandemic. Now we're missing 60 million tourists that used to support 300,000 jobs, including over 200,000 in the hospitality sector. So our first goal should be to help restaurateurs survive this time. I'm for halting the commercial rent tax. I'm for automatically renewing permits where right now the city is playing permit cop instead of partner. I'm for forgiving sales tax for the time being. I'm for following any state loosening of operating guidelines, because like right now we're expecting so much of our small business owners and operators, and they're looking around saying, wait a minute, I owe 10 months of back rent. Like, why am I going to be reopening? And then our government's policy toward them seems to be just to check up on them instead of trying to get them through this period. Bulk buying of heaters and air filtration systems, instead of saying do this, we should be trying to help you do it. I'm passionate about this because I've been the owner and operator of a small business, and I know how tough it is. Like, I know you're doing it half of the time for the love. And then when these regulations come, even if they're well-intended, some of them really do not make that much sense for your operating context and your reality. And so I understand this question very deeply. And one of my goals will be to have regulations that are tailored, that make sense for your industry. But right now, regulation in my mind should be trying to get out of your way and push resources in your direction so you have a chance to reopen and survive.
Thank you, Andrew. So I want to just give you, well, so first off, Susan, thank you so much for asking the question. Good to see you virtually and hopefully see you in person sooner than later. Before we get to our next question, I just want to give Andrew Yang one more minute to just do a quick self-introduction. You don't have to get into all your policy points because we're asking the questions, but just who you are and why you are the right person to be elected mayor of New York City.
Thank you, Andrew. I talked about this a little bit just now. Many of you were introduced to me by my presidential campaign, but before that, I spent years running a small business here in New York City. I'm an operator. I understand what you all do. I appreciate it a great deal. And as an operator, I look at what's going on in our city and I see the problems in numbers. Again, 60 million missing tourists. Midtown Manhattan is 82% unoccupied in its commercial real estate. We're down 700,000 jobs. 300,000 New Yorkers have relocated out of the city, including some very high tax earners. Companies right now are considering disinvesting, and a lot of your businesses rely upon corporate customers, travelers who frankly can spend some extra money on that bottle of wine. Like this is the crisis. If we can't restart the engine that is the New York City economy, the restaurant landscape will never be the same, and then our city will never recover, because you all are one of the main reasons why people want to live in New York, want to work in New York, and want to visit New York.
Great. Thank you, Andrew. Next, I am going to bring up Peter Votros. Peter, if you want to bring your video on while I introduce you. So Peter, here now we have Staten Island representing. Peter is just a great guy, incredible restaurateur, chef. Stone House located in Staten Island at Clove Lakes Park. They have the restaurant, and then I don't know, a bunch of years ago, we went to Chef's Loft, which is upstairs, and it's just such a cool environment. And he's opening up places over the island and is really just committed to the industry, to our city, and really glad he could join us today. So Peter, the floor is yours. The order of questions will go Shaun Donovan, Kathryn Garcia, Diane Morales, and then Andrew Yang.
Thank you for having me, and thank you all for spending your time, answering these questions to, help us decide, the direction the city's going. So candidates running for elected office always have a long list of policy promises, but there's a big difference between campaign promises and enacting policy if elected. How will your administration differ from previous ones, specifically when it comes to restaurant and nightlife legislature, and how are you uniquely qualified to work with the governor and local legislators to get these things accomplished?
Thanks, Peter. Shaun, it's all you.
Thanks, Peter. You heard me in my opening talk about having been trusted again and again to lead through crisis. Through all of that experience, I've worked at the city level, I've worked at the state level, whether it to transform our property tax system to make it more fair and to get more affordable housing, to work with the state legislature and the governor to be able to get a landmark agreement to provide more services to our homeless, and to work at the federal level as budget director under President Obama. Folks forget, after 4 years of Donald Trump, we inherited the worst budget deficit since World War II, dramatically reduced it faster than any time since World War II, while still investing in big priorities like healthcare and housing and creating jobs. So I have been trusted again and again to do exactly what you're saying, to actually get these things done. But I want to say it's not just in my government role. When COVID was emerging last year, while I was running my campaign, I raised over $1 million, started a program called Common Table that got restaurants cooking again in 5 of our hardest hit neighborhoods to serve emergency meals directly to people's doors. We developed an app so that folks wouldn't have to wait 4 hours in line and potentially get COVID. They could pick it up at the restaurant or take it home. And guess what? We designed it in a way that FEMA could actually pay for it, and got it started. It was so successful here, we got it started in New Orleans and California as well. And I've been talking to the incoming Homeland Security Secretary under President Biden, a good friend, about getting FEMA to pay for it. It's a way we could inject hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars into our restaurants and make sure that people are being fed in this time of crisis. Those are the kinds of innovative, direct solutions I've done, not just in government, but even as a candidate running for mayor.
Thank you, Shaun. Kathryn, floor is yours.
Sure. And, Shaun, I appreciate the work that you did, because obviously I was overseeing all of the food distribution in the city during that time. It was just unfortunately a little on the late side, because by June we were well past the hump and I had done 1 million meals a day through most of May. So it's like, you got to be able to move faster. When you asked me to put something together over a weekend, I did it. I stood up a program over a weekend and ended up delivering 130 million meals, using some of our biggest catering halls in the city of New York to get that done. I am a doer. I am not going to wait around until we get it perfect. You got to get it out there, because allowing anyone to go hungry during COVID is not an option. And I have proved that over and over and over again in every role that I have had. And I have been asked to step up in Hurricane Sandy, during COVID with food, but even before that, to deal with the crisis of lead exposure for children, or to step in as interim chair at NYCHA. This is in my blood, the day-to-day direct service for New Yorkers to make sure that they get what they need when they need it. And I don't put together programs that are not achievable. When I set out to transform the commercial waste sector, I had the hospitality industry in the room. I had revenue in the room. I had New York Lawyers for the Public Interest, environmental justice, and we crafted legislation that is rolling out now that will work. Not everyone agreed with every aspect of it, but it will transform the city and reduce truck traffic by 50%, but still keep competition. I bring people together to get things done, and I believe in being ambitious but achievable.
Thank you, Kathryn. Diane.
Thanks, Andrew. Good question. I think this is a really good question. So, the bottom line is I have spent my entire career working for and advocating for the underdogs of our society, those who have not felt represented, those who have not felt centered, those who have not felt prioritized by our leadership, by our government, by our policies. My campaign specifically is intended and was launched so that we could create a new paradigm moving forward about whose voices and whose needs are centered in the creation of policy for this city. And that includes each and every one of you, right? It includes those that have been harmed the most throughout the course of this pandemic, those that have suffered the most throughout the course of this pandemic, even as we know, we have generated more millionaires and billionaires in this city, in the state, and in the country. And so it is a core tenet of my campaign that I will advocate for and work for the businesses that help to run our city and that help to make New York City what it is. As for Albany, I am unabashedly, unapologetically have been one to come out to say that it is past time for us to confront the bully in Albany who has not in fact taken care of our city throughout the course of this crisis. And so, I am able to do that. I am able to commit to that because I do not have a history. I am not entrenched in the system, and I don't owe anyone favors other than the community that has made it possible for me to be here as a candidate in this race. So that's how I would approach this, and that's how I would move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. Andrew Yang, you're up.
Thank you, Peter. So the fundamental question you're asking is, hey, how are you going to get things done? And I'm going to suggest that there are at least 3 components to getting things done. Number 1 is going to be, can you get the resources? We need federal aid. And I'm just going to use Broadway as an example. Chuck Schumer, Champion Broadway, got $15 billion for Broadway theaters that they're going to be opening on the federal dime, which I agree with. Because if you're going to try and bring back millions of tourists, you need to plant the flag. The Restaurant Act that's being considered right now is the right move. I can make a better case to President, Vice President, Secretary of Transportation, the Senate Majority Leader. I have dozens of friends on Capitol Hill, and I can get on national TV anytime I want to beat the drum for New York City and restaurants in particular deserving aid. Number 2 is commitment of resources. I think I'm the only candidate who said we need a deputy mayor committed to nightlife, entertainment, and culture. And someone specifically for the restaurant industry, because you all have very, very specific problems that we need to try and clear out. I have a very vivid sense of what you're struggling with right now. Your survival's at stake, and we need to make sure that we're with you every step of the way. I think I'm the only person who's like said we need a deputy mayor for this. And then number 3 is I'm an operator myself, so I wanted to get to the guts of the things that are holding you back and then make them fair. And I'm going to call out one thing that I think many of you have experienced. A lot of New Yorkers right now have converted to takeout. You have converted to takeout because that's, just necessary to survive. But there are these apps that are taking 30% or more. And the worst part is you don't even get your own consumers' data. Think about that. You cook them food, they order from your restaurant, and then you can't even reach out to them to grow your customer base and build that relationship because the app is standing between you. As mayor, I can see to it that we cap those fees so you keep more of every dollar that you are earning. That app is not earning that dollar, you and yours are. And it is your customer, you should get the data. That's the kind of thing that'll actually give your businesses a real path forward. I want to get into the details of what's holding you all back and clear them out, whether it's us or the apps or the fact that we're missing 60 million tourists. I'm going to work every day for you.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Peter. Good seeing you. See you
Great to see you.
soon. I see you got your jacket on, so we'll let you get back to work. But thank you for everything you do. Next, we are going to be bringing up Mark Liu, Mark. Great. Well, another great, I haven't been yet, but Andres on our team just had a great dinner the other night at, I think it was at Porto Salvo. Mark is a great chef, restaurateur in the Bronx. He has been, had great reviews and Time Out and all over the place. He is now working with his husband, Luigi, on expanding the brand and getting into more underserved communities, creating great restaurants, hiring people local, and basically doing what our industry does best, opening up great restaurants, employing people, creating great experiences, and cooking great food and making great drinks. So Mark, want to thank you. The order of questions is going to be Shaun Donovan, Kathryn Garcia, Diane Morales, and then Andrew Yang. Mark, the floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. And I think we talked a lot about the policies that in terms of previous questions. So we know that besides policy making, that mayors can also host a lot of events and initiatives that to help promote the city's restaurants and nightlife industry, which I think is very important as our city recovers from the COVID-19. So my question is that just like the late Mayor Dinkin, who created the first restaurant week back in 1992, which is still going strong today, what kind of events or initiatives that would you undertake as mayor post-COVID to help restore New York City as the culinary capital of the world and the city that never sleeps? How do we bring the customers back?
Thank you, Mark. Shaun, you're up.
Mark, such a great question. And I often like to borrow from a phrase that says, there's nothing wrong with New York that can't be solved by what's right with New York. And what that means is we have to bring not just our restaurateurs, but our artists and our performers out into the streets. We should be taking our unused commercial space right now and creating pop-ups as we're recovering. Pop-up restaurants. We should be ensuring that we have pop-up art galleries and performances. We should be bringing into our public spaces as the weather gets better, not just a permanent ability to eat outdoors, but also all kinds of festivals and celebrations. All of us who have been locked up on Zooms, and I'm enjoying this Zoom, but I can't wait to get out into real forums. There's going to be a huge demand if the city actually makes our public space available and uses the very talents of our New Yorkers to bring this city alive again. I would also very clearly take city resources and sponsor an NYC and Company campaign across this country and across the globe to let everyone know that New York is the healthiest and safest place on earth, and also the most fun place to be after you've been locked at home for a year. Those kind of campaigns are exactly what we need to be doing at this moment that celebrate the incredible diversity of our food, our arts, and our culture. That's what I would do.
Thank you, Shaun. Kathryn Garcia.
Thank you. And last week I announced the Rediscover NYC. It's really a campaign to first start with New Yorkers and to have them rediscover the city. Until we can have the tourists come back, we need to show that we are open, because you can spend your entire life here and still discover new hidden gems. And we would use our advertising space. We have a lot of advertising space across this city that's controlled by the city, as well as making investments in NYC & Co. to do the same. We need to show that we're open, because that will bring everyone else back. But as I said in the Reopen to Stay Open plan, we need to fundamentally expand the use of open space for restaurants and bars and allow them to serve drinks outside, that we need to have a series of block parties across every neighborhood to bring people together, to make sure that they are able to participate in art and culture. We have to really lean into the things that make us special. And it is our diversity, it is our art, it is our culture, and it is our restaurants. As I like to say, There are 8.6 million food snobs in the city of New York. And they will tell you that they expect to be able to walk down out of their neighborhood and get every different ethnic food available. But I also want to make sure that we continue to support restaurants going forward. So I have said that I will cap third-party app commissions. They are absolutely wrong. They are taking away money from your pocket. But I know that we can go forward. I want to be a champion for New York City restaurants and nightlife, as well as the arts and culture, because one, that's fun, and two, it is the right thing to do economically.
Thank you. Diane Morales.
I really love this question because it opens up the opportunity to be really creative and just move away from, any preconceived notions about the way things need to be done. And that is so consistent with my campaign and the idea of suspending disbelief. So I love the idea of, preserving and expanding our Open Streets initiative. I love the idea of combining opportunities for our artists community to actually perform in public spaces and actually draw people into spaces. I love the idea of thinking about doing sort of borough weeks as opposed to, we have the restaurant week, which was referenced, but this week we're going to focus on Brooklyn. Next week we're going to focus on, and really sort of encouraging New Yorkers to participate in the recovery of the industry by actually bringing their business and bringing their dollars to support communities in that way by borough, and actually doing things like that allows opportunities for families to do things together, gives artists an opportunity to perform and share their talents and gifts, which I know that they are so ready to do again, and also to sort of vitalize and regenerate the traffic and the operations of our industry. And I think that there are so many really creative things that we can do on this front in order to bring together all of the different, the needs and the wants of New Yorkers in communities and spaces so as to revitalize the industry.
Great. Thank you. Andrew Yang.
I also love this question. Restaurant Week, it's funny to think about its genesis because it's been such a big part of our lives. So in the very near term, what we're going to need to get restaurants back on their feet is an app so that people can quickly verify they've been vaccinated. So it's not just you've been vaccinated, everyone in the restaurant's been vaccinated. And a vaccine passport to me is job number one. I think I'm the only candidate who's called for a massive post-COVID 5-borough celebration, in part to signal to the world that New York City is open for business, it's open for tourism. The fact is right now, if you were to ask someone to associate like New York City with something, right now it might be an image of people leaning out of their balconies, like hitting pots and pans, thanking essential workers. Like that's the image that a lot of people have of New York, and we need to give them a new, updated image of people celebrating in the streets. My number one priority is seeing to it that you all survive and that your businesses actually have a path forward. But if you look at what's going to bring all these tourists back, and Shaun made mention of this, you're all restaurateurs. Right now, can you imagine being a restaurateur considering where they're open in New York City? You're going to look at it and you're not sure whether, like, what the next 5 years look like. So we need to lower the barrier either for you or for someone coming from outside the city to take on a 6, 9, 12-month pop-up lease where you can give a location a try. You can try out like a different menu, different cuisine with a much lower investment or buy-in, and then convince various landlords that, look, you've got an empty restaurant or storefront, like you're much better off filling it at a reduced rate for 6 or 9 months. And then if we do that at a high enough level, then that can become something that really draws people back to New York, because everyone loves something that is going to like expire or has some kind of end date. It's like, if you know that there's like a particular set of restaurants that are only there for 6 months, you really want to try and get there. So these are some of the things that we can do to bring tourists back. But again, my focus is on you all first and foremost. We have to send the message that New York City is still the place to be. And I think I can make that message more powerfully and more clear than anyone else in this field.
Thank you, Andrew. Shaun? Oh, you win.
Must have been a memorable answer, Andrew.
No,
Thanks.
no, you got it. No, sorry. I'm looking at my notes right here. No, that was great. Thank you. Mark, thank you very much.
Thank you,
Next,
everyone.
I'm going to Pedro, you can bring your camera up and I'll introduce you. So next up, we have Pedro Zamora. Here we are in Queens. We've gone around the boroughs. Pedro's a Mexican immigrant, owns Zamora Entertainment, which is La Boom, national radio station. His venues include Katina Rooftop, Stage 48, and he's just all around good guy, very engaged in the community. And Pedro, the floor is yours if you want to bring your video on. Oh, we'll give you another 20 seconds. All right. Well, I'll ask Pedro's question, but if you come in, do like the Jeopardy. All right. So Pedro, if you come in, I'll let you finish the question. So this is actually a little bit personal too. So I am actually vice chair of community. Oh, hold on.
Okay, sorry.
No problem.
Right there, right there.
There you go. There you are.
Okay, okay. I'm just. It's just that my camera wasn't working. I'm sorry. I apologize.
No,
Can
it's
you
fine.
can you guys hear me?
You're
Yes,
here
go
now.
ahead.
We can
You're
hear
great.
you and see you. Perfect. Oh, there you
Okay.
go.
Oh
You're
my God.
on
Okay.
now.
Okay. I'm just having. Okay. But I cannot pull the. I'm sorry.
Your question?
I cannot pull the question at the same time
I got
because.
Oh,
But can you read please the question for me? I'm sorry, Andrew.
No, don't worry about it. Do you want to put your video off and ask it?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, okay, put your video off, ask it, and then bring your video back.
Okay, okay, okay. Let me do that.
All right.
Okay. Okay, here we go. I apologize. Okay, many restaurant and line life operators and the community members express frustration with the community board process related to liquor licenses and sidewalk cafes. There is a lot of frustration on what the community board process for many reasons. For example, community boards not representative of the entire community. There are local activists who don't like change of any nature and are not reflective of the actual community. As mayor, what if anything would you do to improve the community board application and renewal process for all parties? Thank you.
Perfect. So order is going to be first Kathryn Garcia, followed by Diane Morales, Andrew Yang, and then Shaun Donovan.
Thank you. And I've gotten to hear a little bit about this through my sister's frustration, who has a liquor license. But then they said, oh, that event that you're having, no, that one doesn't fall in. And it was because someone on the community board was complaining. And I actually think was supportive of another business competitor. But the community board one, I think will change because they are now term limited. And the other thing is we need to make sure that we are doing what we've learned in COVID, creating more access, making sure that there is an opportunity for things to be heard electronically, because not everyone can make it to a facility at night to hear, and that is why you end up having a very narrow set of opinions. But I will make sure that City Hall is helping assist with the state on liquor license, and obviously we have control over sidewalk cafes, because we have to be supportive of you. We have to get this done right. And I have to say, I've enjoyed the ability to get takeout drinks during COVID. I was like, this is a big upside in an otherwise incredibly dark year. And I know that we have made it more vibrant to have that physical seating on the street, to be able to do that. And the sky didn't fall. shockingly, the sky did not fall with all of these open restaurants. So I will work collaboratively with you to make that happen. And
Thank you.
definitely have heard from someone on the front lines how the rules can seem to change weekend to weekend of what you are allowed to do. And that just is totally unfair for small businesses.
Thank you.
Diane Morales.
Yes, thank you. Hola, Pedro. I think that this is actually a really good question. On the community board side, there are some issues with the community board structures and composition, and I think that we should definitely move towards a model, as Kathryn said, with the term limits, but also that is reflective of the community stakeholders, a broad array of community stakeholders, including the businesses. And so I think that would be helpful in terms of balancing perspectives and opinions and actually moving towards more equity for everybody that is being impacted and represented. Insofar as, the state and liquor licenses and that kind of thing, I think that, moving towards making sure that special interests are less of a driving factor in terms of policy and legislation is an important thing, and advocating for and supporting the rights of small businesses and our hospitality industry, I think, is critical. I too enjoyed the sidewalk and outdoor beverage access that we had access to, and I think that we need to move toward being more supportive. Again, as I've mentioned earlier, and loosening up a little bit in places where it's relatively easy to do that, and move away from this historic kind of punitive and fine-oriented and discipline-oriented regulation of businesses. So, I think we need to loosen up and lighten up a little bit and make it possible for you all to be able to breathe and have the flexibility to do some of the things that will make it possible to position you all to thrive.
Thank you, Diane. Andrew Yang, you're up.
Thank you for the question, Pedro. I want to put the night back in nightlife. And I think you might be able to tell because I've got a deputy mayor of nightlife, entertainment, and culture. So, Pedro, I agree with what Kathryn and Diane said about having community boards that represent more diverse interests, that hopefully things will improve because of some of the changes that are being made. But I want to just speak to how important I think this is. Things shutting down at 10 p.m., that's not New York City. And the fact is that this is not a small thing. This is a big thing because there are so many people who are attracted to New York City because of the nightlife. I will confess, I might've been one of them, when I moved here in 21 and stayed here throughout my 20s. And the ability for people to go out and stay out late at night and celebrate and socialize, that's actually a key quality of life driver that attracts young, talented, creative people here to New York City, which is imperative for our economic recovery because there are many organizations right now that are trying to figure out whether they need to be headquartered in New York City and pay a premium on office space and taxes and everything else to access that talent. And it all hinges on whether or not your bars are open and people are able to socialize. If they can't, then a young person is like, wait, why am I heading into New York City? Why am I paying a premium? And then they go someplace else. Then New York City loses. So I'm going to be a champion to your industry because I think it is imperative for our economic recovery. This is not frivolous. This is crucial. I'm also, as Kathryn and Diane suggested, I'm for extending the permitting of to-go cocktails indefinitely. The world did not fall. People had a good time. Let's keep it going. I know it's a very high margin item for you and yours. Let's help. But yes, let's put the night back in nightlife. Please, it's vital to the identity of New York City.
Thank you, Andrew. Shaun Donovan, you're up.
So, Andrew, I think you have a unanimous vote that the next forum you hold should be a cocktail hour. It sounds like all of us agree on that.
We cannot, pre-pandemic, we used to host these quarterly cocktail events with restaurant nightlife people, and we're always so busy, running these places, nights, weekends, holidays. So it was so nice to get everyone into one room. So I promise, once we can come back in mass.
I have a confession, you all. I was a party promoter in my late 20s, Ignition NYC. There are pictures to prove it somewhere.
That's a shocker.
Is that a shocker?
No.
I don't know.
Not at all.
Right.
Well,
you're up, Shaun.
You came a little late to the party. I I talked about my complicated family earlier and how nobody cooked at home. And so we ate out every night. My parents, because they were divorced, were also dating. And so it was very hard for them to enforce my curfew. We would often arrive together around 4 or 5 in the morning when I was a teenager. So even before the 20s, the nightlife in New York is personal to me. So, but look, we have to ensure that we have a city government that actually appreciates what makes New York, New York. And that is why I have a specific policy. Go to my website, shaunfornyc.com, about how to reform our community boards. And this isn't just a problem for nightlife. It's a problem for housing. It's a problem for so many other things. I have said we will absolutely, when I am mayor, work with our borough presidents, work with the city council to fundamentally reform the appointments process for the community boards, because it leads to our community boards not representing our communities. And that has to change. And so that is absolutely something I'm committed to. I've also proposed creating an office of the public realm, so that not just for the agencies that touch your permits, but actually coordinating across the DOT and all of the agencies that touch our streets, that touch our storefronts, to ensure that we're actually making government work for you. I've, throughout my career, been able to make government work more effectively together across multiple agencies. I could do that as well as mayor to ensure we make New York the home of nightlife again across this country.
Shaun, I guarantee you had a much more active social life and nightlife than my high school self. You like beat me to it by like a decade, it sounds like.
Great. Well, thank you, Pedro.
The 70s and 80s weren't all bad in New York.
Great. Well, listen, I will tell you, so I am the vice chair of CB7 on the Upper West Side, and I can just tell you from personal experience, over the past couple of years, we've gotten some more people, diversity on the community board. And I know not everyone thinks the Upper West Side is maybe the nightlife place, but we do have really great restaurants. And so much so I saw an Eater now keeps doing a list of like great restaurants on the Upper West Side. So they're there, and we're real close and connected to Harlem. So we're right near Melba's, which you can't beat as well, in so many other places. But, you know, it really is so important, I think, not only on community boards, but in administrations, to ensure that you have people from the small business community, from the nightlife community, from the restaurant community that are on these community boards and in these roles, to be able to give a flavor and a perspective that people, by no fault of their own, just don't have. And also those people that want a vibrant nightlife and a rich restaurant culture as well, you know? So you have fair, balanced representation and a real diversity of the types of eating and drinking that makes New York City what it is. So that was the conclusion of our—
Andrew, I just want to quickly tell Andrew Yang that if you were a party promoter, I can't get you a liquor license through most community boards in Manhattan. You're a non grata. Forget about it.
You know, I mean, I understand. I'm very sketchy. You know, like I'm sure if I were a community board examining my application.
And I always say restaurant nightlife people that are looking in, always obliged to be on community boards. It's so important. I think I said it last time. All this stuff is, you know, don't talk about it, be about it. It's one thing to sit around and complain about challenges, but you should get in there and be a thoughtful, constructive voice. And you can do that, not just for restaurant nightlife, but for all the different issues that our city faces by being on a community board. It's really grassroots democracy. My board meeting went over 4 hours last night talking about stuff like bike lanes and homeless and everything you can imagine. So I just would love to see more of our industry get engaged. So that was
it's so hard. You had 4 hours. Like if you're a small business owner, how are you going to do 4 hours?
Well, that's an incredibly important point, and we're going to mention something in a moment, but that has always been one of the challenges. It is an enormous commitment to be on 2 committees that meet monthly and then have full board meeting, and then what else you do. So, you know, thinking about ways, going to the question of restructuring possibly the way community boards work to get more people involved and engaged, because not everyone can spend that amount of time, even if they really want to. So I just want to say one thing before I move on, because we're just getting to the end of our time, is, these forums are just so important for our industry. Really, like I said earlier, having a seat at the table, making sure that our restaurant nightlife industry issues are New York City industry issues, and they are on the front burner for the next mayoral administration. So as we advance and get closer to the primaries, we look forward to having some more back and forth conversations with many of the candidates where we really start getting into the weeds, like I just started talking about, on that community board issue. So we're looking forward to those. We also want to just thank all the people that sent in questions. We obviously couldn't get to everything that people were asking. I know people are sending stuff in the chat. We hope to get to them in the future. And we also wanted to make sure we spent our time with the candidates talking about issues that the next mayor, well, one, will be relevant, because who knows where we will be by 2022, and also that are in their realm of authority. So I see a lot of critically important questions, but they may fall more into the realm of the governor or the state legislature or Congress and the federal government. So we really want to tailor these to New York City specific jurisdiction issues. So before I turn it over to Rob Bookman to make a few remarks, I said earlier at the start, I wasn't going to ask everyone their favorite empanada or bagel or slice of pizza like on all these non-restaurant nightlife forums. But to have a little fun, why don't we just start with Andrew Yang, Shaun Donovan, Dianne Morales, and Kathryn Garcia. Just name a couple of your favorite restaurants and bars and nightclubs. Andrew, you're on.
My first date with my wife, Evelyn, was at a place called Hell's Kitchen in Hell's Kitchen. It was a high-end Mexican restaurant, delicious. And then it moved location, still delicious. They changed the menu somewhat. We're ordering a lot of dim sum from Tim Ho Wan, which is like Hell's Kitchen also. You should check it out. It's gone takeout, but whatever. And then there's a place called Corner Slice that it sounds like a corner slice place, but it's like actually like they have 72-hour pizza dough. It's by the guy behind Ivan Ramen. I think his name was Ivan Orkin. And so those are three places that I'm eating a little bit too much of. But those are some of my favorites. Nightlife, man, I'm a dad now. I mean, any club I would name has been closed for years, unfortunately. Like back in my day, what was it? Like Tunnel, Marquee. And then you go way, way back, it was freaking Limelight that got converted into like a retail mall, which blew my mind because Limelight was like the epicenter of like New York City.
I'm the old one today.
I'm really gonna age myself. I'm really gonna age myself because I got all of them their licenses.
Yep. All right, Shaun Donovan, you're up.
All right, 3 different restaurants from 3 different parts of my life. Raising my boys on Bergen Street, our tradition was every Sunday night, we would get a Grimaldi's pizza and sit on the stoop. So that's one. Second, I grew up with Dan Barber, the chef of Blue Hill. We were his first catering customers, actually, before he ever even opened up. And I might have had something to do with Barack Obama surprising Michelle with a date night at Blue Hill. So that's 2. And 3 is I talked about how my parents were both working jobs and nobody cooked at home. And so eating at home meant going around the corner to the restaurant. Well, that's still true of me. Although my wife's a great cook, I still eat out a lot. And Rucola is literally across the street from me in Borum Hill. And I am there. It is my cafeteria, and I am there all the time. So that's 3.
Excellent. Thank you. Dianne.
Oh, did you not want me to go next? I thought we were.
Oh, no, we were switching them up. It was, Dianne, then Kathryn.
Okay, no problem.
Got it. So unfortunately, my favorite spot, the one place that over the last 5 to 7 years has served as my Cheers, my local Cheers, where everybody, know each other and we could grab a burger or some drinks, actually has not survived the pandemic. But that being said, there's a small restaurant called Dino's on DeKalb Avenue in Brooklyn. It's a little hole in the wall, just a few blocks away from Brooklyn Tech High School, where my son went to school, and was a regular spot for us. There is the Porchlight restaurant on the west side in Manhattan. that has more of a picnic table kind of feel inside. And then, my last decade I spent working in the Bronx, and there's 089 on Arthur Avenue in the Bronx. That has also been one of my favorite places. And, in terms of nightlife, I was one of those people that was dancing at the Limelight back in the day. Thank you very much, Andrew Yang. And, no regrets, but at this point in my life, I'm not hanging out very late.
Thank you. All right. I see. Kathryn.
So yes, no, I have to say that I eat out a lot, and I am the mom. When you texted me dinner ? And I was trying to get home, I finally just said, go to the restaurant, I'll be there. Order whatever you want. But that includes, like, in my neighborhood, Aldi La and Stone Park, but in Williamsburg, Marlowe and Sons and Kings County Imperial, Russo's. You've never had a cocktail party until you've been to Russo's on the Bay for the cocktail party that goes on. You don't need to eat dinner afterwards. And in terms of nightlife, I have to tell you that I was at the Limelight, I was at the Tunnel, I was at Mars. Webster Hall. I think I went to Webster Hall the night before my wedding.
The area.
But it's been a while since I've done that, and I actually usually run into people who are out at 4 a.m. at the 24-hour deli when I'm getting coffee to go to work. And they're getting the egg sandwich to take home with them, or the French fries with cheese, which, is another favorite end of the evening snack. But I love being out. One of the funny things is the Times had asked me, your New York story. And I said Studio 54 when I was 14. And I got text from my father the next day, Studio 54, ? And I was like, you didn't need to know then. I'm sorry you know now. Everything's fine. I got home that night. It's all okay.
Good. Very nice. Great. Well, listen, I think there's actually like a couple of connections, all great selections, been to, I think, probably all of them.
We didn't ask them which was their favorite live music club that no longer exists. And there's a long list of them, from Wetlands to Coney Island High, CBGBs, Brownies. That's another
winery comes back. That is what
we can have a whole conversation on why live music, which New York City used to be the capital of, is now dead in New York City.
I just saw Michael from City Winery. I think he was on here too. So
Michael, yes, of course.
Go back, but one of my aunts got married at Russo's. I mean, Limelight, yeah, closed, but I actually think there's Grimaldi's in Limelight now in that market. So anyways, all great selections. Before we let everyone go, I just want Rob to make a couple of comments, and I have a few closing comments, and we should wrap up in less than 5 minutes.
Thank you, man. I want to thank you all for being here. I know you're doing a million of these, and it's another one to check off your list. But for us, for this industry, we've come a long way in the number of years where Mayor Giuliani wouldn't originally meet with the executive board of the New York Nightlife Association because he felt we were, they were all these nightclub owners must be a bunch of criminals. To where we have now, the best and the brightest running for mayor, interested in our issues, and it may be a minor just thing for you, but it's very important for us and the hundreds of people who are on last time and this time. And so we want to thank you for all of that. It is meaningful to us, very meaningful. Heard wonderful ideas tonight. And like I said last time, since only one of you will be elected, we guarantee that we will steal some of your ideas if you don't get elected. But we also think, quite frankly, that you are a great group of leaders. As was the first group, only one of you is going to wind up being mayor, but we have a feeling that all of you have a long career ahead in government or public service, and we want to be a part of that. We want you to reach out to us as a resource. Many of these issues are complicated. Liquor licensing, which my firm does as a specialty, is complicated. How it interacts with all of the issues we've discussed. many issues that we would be happy to be resources for all of you, both in your campaign and afterwards. Just give you a quick example. We can have all the outdoor roadway dining we want, but liquor consumption in the roadway dining is now only allowed because of the executive orders. And once the executive orders end, unless we get legislative change in Albany, you can't have alcohol consumption in the roadway dining. Sidewalks, yes, but not roadway. So that, you know, it's great. It'll be great if one of you is mayor, but we're going to need to give you a primer on how we need to deal with other issues as well. I want to close by giving a story that from our first president, Jeff Bank from Carmine's Restaurant. I assume everybody in New York has been to Carmine's. But Carmine's is a local, started in New York by Artie Cutler, him and his partner, Mr. Wong. They did Ollie's and it started in New York as well. It's now one of the largest grossing restaurants in the country, but it's, from our perspective, still a small business. It's a New York-based small business, not a chain. It's not a fast food place. And they've opened in a number of cities. And one story Jeff tells is when he opened in Washington, he had an opening party for the staff. And an older gentleman came up to him and said, "Mr. Bank, I want to thank you for giving me a dishwashing job. I've been unemployed for some time. I had some criminal background, and when I really appreciate you giving me this opportunity. And when we have our 5th anniversary party, you're going to come back to me and say, Jim, you are the best dishwasher I've ever had." And Jeff Bank turned to him and said, "Jim, if you're still washing dishes for me after 5 years, and I've failed you, because that's not what our industry is about. Our industry is about people getting started and moving up and eventually owning places of their own like Melba's. So I expect you to be in a different job here in 5 years." And that's who we are. And we have hundreds of thousands of stories like that. So we want to leave you with that and to thank you for being here tonight.
Rob, with
Thank
that,
Thank you.
well said. And when we formed the Hospitality Alliance a little over 8 years ago, making sure that our industry had an independent voice in the halls of government and an organization that could really serve them, we never thought, 8 years later, we'd have thousands of members throughout the 5 boroughs representing smallest mom and pop places to your Carmine's, to, your 4-star restaurant and everything in between. Bars, clubs, nightclubs. And here we are talking with some incredibly just thoughtful, caring people running to be the next mayor of the city of New York. So we're grateful for your time. We look forward to your partnerships in whatever capacity that is. You can always reach out to us to any questions, anything to do with the industry. We are constructive. We're there. We live this stuff day in and day out. Of course, I want to thank the people that have tuned in, everyone that supported us, KI Legal, Miles Sharon Associates, the attendees. We have more coming up on the council races, of course, on the mayoral races. We're fighting for that Restaurants Act and that federal support to help save our restaurants, save our nightlife, our whole entire team. So with that, I see Shaun Donovan, Kathryn Garcia, Diane Morales, Andrew Yang. We want to thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we'll see everyone else hopefully very soon. Let's save our restaurants and nightlife if we want to save our city. Peace, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you
Great
all.
session.
Have a good night. Stay
Great
safe.
session.